What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another game theory reaction video, and we are back with the Biohazard King.
Hello.
So yes, this is part 2. If you remember, we reacted to part 1 a little bit ago, so we're gonna try part 2 and see what's going on with the rise of Afton.
If you haven't seen part 1, this little button up here, the info card, it'll be up there. You should click on it and go watch that, and then come back to this video.
I should remember to put an info card. Alright, let's get into the reaction.
Hello, Internet!
Hello, Internet.
To Game Theory, and officially page 7 of the FNaF Timeline script. Last time I covered
Page
the
7,
origins of
jeez.
Freddy. We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making
It's a bear!
Yeah, I remember that.
Infuriating
It's a
moment that his
bear!
dream is copied by a rival restaurant franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger of the two franchises results in William meeting Henry, a brilliant designer with a knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving. The world of robotics
making money.
New and exciting
He's making that cashola.
Jealous.
Yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion.
Yeah.
And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there's
He became evil.
death, something that Afton would become intimately familiar with. But before Afton acquaints himself with death, I want you to take some time to acquaint yourself with our newest channel. Guys,
oh, the
this
new
is
channel
a
announcement.
moment for us theorists. For the last decade, we've had this 4-player controller icon, and now we finally fill in the final missing piece. Get ready for the rollout of our newest theorist channel. Drumroll, please. Style theory, where we're looking at the science, math, psychology, history, and mystery of the way you look, your clothing, fashion trends, hygiene, and makeup.
Oh, the boots.
Now, I know that theorizing about style might sound weird at first, but hear me out. I grew up not understanding style or fashion at all. Admittedly, I was a bit of a hot
I still don't
mess,
understand
blissfully
style and
ignorant
fashion.
to the impact that style has over your life and how the world
Not
treats
fashionable.
you. But over time, by educating myself on the ins and outs of the fashion industry, I was better able to achieve my true self and find my own sense of personal style. And that right there, that builds confidence. The way that you look directly affects the way that you feel and the way that other people
Welshie needs to watch this video.
Understanding those rules and being able to take some control over all of that is incredibly valuable. It's an educational curve. And what do we do on these channels? We like to educate you while entertaining you, which honestly is why I think this channel is so important for us to launch.
They entertain us?
Lies and half-truths in the fashion industry that there needs to be someone out there to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and this is what science says. Also, you know, we're gonna have a lot of fun because talking about fashion is weird. Like, this channel has already given me the excuse to bludgeon a ballistic head to death using a high heel.
Oh, damn. Oh, whoa.
It's also the channel where we're gonna physically be testing the viability of female armor, or how many t-shirts it takes to stop a bullet. There's also practical everyday stuff too on this channel. Do school uniforms actually benefit the students? Does it make a difference whether or not you wash your legs in the shower? That's the sort of stuff that you can find on this new channel. In fact, there are 5 new episodes that you can check out right after you finish this beast of an upload. I personally recommend starting with the Killer Heel episode, because this episode's all about the birth of a killer. And while you're over there, consider subscribing. It'll do all of us over here a huge favor, because if we manage to get 1 million subscribers by the end of the month, it'll put us as a top fashion channel here on YouTube. Show the world that looking smart can be even better than looking cool. So go ahead, enjoy your all-day theory marathon. And now with our logo complete, it's time to complete our other massive
he's got the logo
project,
complete.
This timeline. Onward to part 2, where things are about to get dark in a hurry.
Alright, let's go. The Afton era.
1983. Business was booming with 2 whole restaurant franchises running. Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and make it into a reality. They called their new invention the Springlock suit. And fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these 2 men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited. Restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner. It didn't work out for William. This meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushie.
He's there, he's there,
Cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid. He also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump-scaring him with a foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his camera cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all.
Weird.
Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements.
Was that the ball of 87?
Clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp. It was just a prank. It was meant to be
If we
fun.
see
The boy
this
was
in the
taken to
movie, if we
hospital
like
and
see
was
something like this in the
immediately
movie, that's gonna be
given an IV. Flowers
insane.
and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe.
Or
He
even
couldn't
like the
recover.
spring
As
lock
the younger
of
brother's
William
consciousness
Afton.
began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his
I'm
father,
sorry.
William, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together. This would not be the end. No matter what, William's son would live again. It would
Then
just
he
take
tortured
time.
him with
Time that
nightmare
right now
animatronics.
he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the
Into
aftermath
the
of tragedy, changes started
unknown.
happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was William's idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother.
So that's putting the bite before
locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to
is it
swallow
Charlie
after
the
all
puppet?
hard work that he
Charlie's
and Henry put
Charlie's
into
death?
this. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work every day. The death of this little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV. But his son
That's Michael,
was
right?
far worse. Complaining
I don't-
of seeing
Watching
hallucinations of a
TV
golden
from
bear
this
standing
location.
outside
Well, it was
his
never
window.
confirmed.
The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced
sure.
that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life. The suit's three-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The words
There was a
"It's
theory
me"
that
ringing
FNaF 4
through
was
Michael's
played by
ears.
Michael.
Some nights, Michael
Yeah.
would even go
Because,
so far as
like,
to break out of his room to
they were
check the
torturing
grave
him
site
for
and ensure
killing
that
his
his
brother,
brother was
but-
still there.
Yeah.
As for
There we go.
William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think, to remember, to reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they'd cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him. The robotic part was the part that failed after all. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home.
Don't make this more
Drunk,
difficult.
Angry,
Yeah.
William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea. A beautifully awful idea. This was his chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all
not the
those
right thing
years.
to do, dude.
Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry
So he did it
feel
out of
what it's like to
revenge?
have something you love get ripped
I
away. While parties
guess.
continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. And it felt good. He felt free. The years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally
not
released
the
in a
right
moment
thing
of
to
pure,
do.
unapologetic evil. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts.
He's gone psychotic.
And in that moment, William became a killer. He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled, but also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime. In the weeks that followed, Fredbear's family diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths
Interesting.
around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location.
Yeah.
And there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly faded. Afton kept a low
I guess the deaths were like pretty close together, but I didn't think that
even surpassing him.
Crying Child's death was before before Charlie's, but I guess it does kind of make sense.
For all those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first of these experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house.
Timelines all like
which allowed him to work while still monitoring
all out of order for me.
security cameras. 1983. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important. Why he was down there in the first place. This was all to fulfill the promise that he had made to his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him. All for him. Right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry had gotten Afton to start learning more about life.
He gets him scooped.
The human mind. And what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting, putrid, terrifying.
So it like
these would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the
illusion
house
disc kind of thing.
That's it, yeah.
But then again, this was the boy who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares.
Yeah, that's the theory I heard about.
Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects,
I think that's where
Michael would say actually when we play.
There's some non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside your wall?
Balora's mom.
Hi, Mom.
All I see
I don't know if I like that.
no more joy.
I always liked the fact that Crying Child was
and despite her repeated demands that he
main character of
his
FNaF 4.
With the family, he refused
it seems more
time and time
reasonable.
again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house.
You burned down the house?
It was like a morgue.
But
You need to see your
the baby
is
is mine.
I'm keeping the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one lingering feeling. William wasn't done. He had gotten a taste of what it felt like to be unleashed, what it felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. June 26th, 1985. Putting on the golden Bonnie suit, he lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the first. You never truly forget your first.
I am the first. I have seen everything.
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found and where they'd never leave the building. They had to be stuffed inside of the suits. No one maintained those things anyway except for him. And so
That's a cool
Susie
thumbnail
would
shot.
go into Chica. Fritz, Jeremy and Gabriel would come next, but it was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school, throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far
That was
more
from
violent
the
and broken than
cutscene.
any of the others. He'd let himself
Yeah.
go
From
into
Ultimate
the
Custom.
sun.
And we're back!
With no more
And we're
active animatronics left, he
back.
shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage. The long-forgotten yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back. But they couldn't convict him.
Oh,
They
damn.
had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had was circumstantial at best, and so he walked away a free man.
That's
but
crazy.
Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again. So he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could
It's not
he
good.
protect
Interesting.
kids? Finally, he developed a solution.
Yeah, he made the
would implement
toys.
an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics. Toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys, these were special. They were a new breed of
Criminal.
robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most
Criminal.
importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database, so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987, and the
Yeah.
This was the part of
Freddy
87.
Fazbear's Pizza was making headlines in local newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was back, and without him, that was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying to cut him out of the picture.
Uh-oh.
No, as long as these restaurants stayed open, William would always come back.
I
There was no phone
always
number to
come
apply
back.
at the
He
bottom
said
of
the
article.
catchphrase.
He said it.
To apply, call.
I'd love it if
Afton would go back, not
Matthew
as an
Little
owner
said that
or
in the movie.
co-founder. He would
I
go back to
always
the one
come
place
back.
that they would least suspect him, a lowly day shift security guard. And there it was, buried in the back of parts and services, mixed in with the old withered animatronics.
He's gonna say it after the credits roll.
The yellow
That's what
suit
happened.
badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
Yeah, he
I understand the building is on lockdown.
messed around with their facial recognition.
Especially concerning
Yeah.
previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift.
Oh,
And that's
okay.
why the toys think try to kill you because they think you're a criminal because you wear a purple suit or
getting back into the
purple
suit after 2
uniform.
long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good, if he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that? The following day, the news would report a
probably.
security guard getting bitten by one of the animatronics during the day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was stronger
probably.
now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Circus Baby's
Here
Pizza
it is.
World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant
And
floor,
he used
he
those
needed a
just
way
to
of
lure the
remotely
kids
capturing
to
his
him.
victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind,
Yeah.
he designed a
Which is
new
weird.
breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could
Imagine that,
isolate
that's so
children. They could
creepy.
incapacitate and contain
Yeah.
them with zero direct input from him. It was
Even the
brilliant.
kid
He
inside
was brilliant.
Funtime
Far
Freddy.
beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird. Instead, it was back to his characters.
Don't you dare
His creations, Freddy,
disregard
Bonnie,
Chica like that.
Foxy, as well as 2 special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now she would never leave him again. The second, the titular baby, was designed with his baby in mind. Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed until the day that she
Daddy's watching.
Why won't you let me play with her? She's so pretty and shiny.
She can make just for me.
Just for me?
She got scooped. She
The
got
day
scooped.
before Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't
Scoop her.
listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too
Daddy,
close.
why won't you let me play
Animatronic
with
ripped in
her?
half and swallowed her whole. A scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas leak. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage,
Due
he
to
noticed
leaks.
that something was different.
Remember when
The
everyone
robot
freaked out about
Baby
the
had been built with blue eyes,
cancelling
but now
of
it was
sister
emerald
location?
green, the same color as Elizabeth.
Because people,
Yeah.
people thought it was actual like leaks of the
Could this all
game.
be connected to the free-moving animatronics that
Yeah.
he had seen with Freddy? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement.
Everybody's like,
He had
"What?
to return to
It's
where it all
cancelled?
started. 1993. Pathetic. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but William's damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death. They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had, nothing could wash away
Yeah, they
the
hadn't
stink
been
of
washed since
murder
like
that haunted these
1973
halls. One
or
night,
something.
then another, then
Yeah.
another. William repeatedly snuck into the old broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of life itself. But you had to know for sure. Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons reduced down to one silvery puddle of goo. Could he transfer this living metal to his own creations? He had to try. He picked up a syringe and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted, wiry endoskeleton.
Oh,
And suddenly,
damn.
the coils came to life. Like snakes writhing in a pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal
Oh,
moved
yeah,
and
yeah.
jolted on its own. He'd
Although
done
that's
it. He'd
Yendo, not
unlocked the
Freddy.
secret
Yeah.
to life itself. Except something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else, something mindless and frantic. Perhaps by mixing the souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He needed more of
That
this
does
remnant.
make
As he
sense
searched
looking
the old
forward
pizzeria
into the
one more time
game
for any
franchise.
remaining scraps of metal,
yeah.
the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The 5 lined up and blocked the door, and Afton's mind reeled. The scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see, all standing against him.
The children
What could they do?
he
What
murdered.
couldn't they do?
Yeah.
Panicked as Cassidy
All
approached.
5 of them.
How do you stop something
Yeah.
that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death in the first place. He would get into his suit like old times. He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He was the one in charge. The spring lock snapped into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant. Maybe it was just fate coming to collect its due. He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that
He
his
got
brain was
crunched.
suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain.
He
as
got
hundreds of metallic
crushed.
pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All
Yeah,
he could do was
imagine
collapse,
that.
blood slowly
That would
oozing
hurt.
out of the suit and pooling onto the floor
Be
around him.
agonizing
It couldn't
pain.
end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work
Look
was
at his body.
unfinished, unable to move. His only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him. A security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor,
Wasn't he
it
just
caused him
stranded
to
there for
file
30
an
years,
immediate
though?
report of a break-in.
Yeah.
An owner would have to come in and claim the damage. And who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit, to relieve him from
Let's
this tremendous
think
pain.
about
Henry
that for a
entered the
second.
secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned and walked away.
This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this.
Yeah.
Nothing is being taken
Huh.
out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives.
And so
Yeah,
there
they left him.
he would sit, hanging on for 30 years.
I
trapped
don't know
behind
if I
the
like
walls with an
Henry
iron
as
will
well.
that
Like
remained
Henry seeing him and just going,
End
Yeah.
of this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just
There it
yet,
is.
but this just felt like a really solid stopping point. The episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this
True.
is things that we already
Forever.
knew, stuff that's been established and reestablished time and time again by the games. That said,
Yeah.
there are 2 things that I absolutely have to address.
Father
the
and
first
daughter.
and biggest is the placement of sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in game seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated
Yeah.
over and over again by psychic
Yeah.
friend Fredbear, aka William Afton,
might have
speaking through a
saw-
walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what
He
did
never-
he see?
you
Well,
don't know.
I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like
Yeah.
Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one presumably left behind by a dead sister. And lastly, it explains why he's scared, and more specifically, why Afton wants him scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics. He doesn't want them getting too close, because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares, to scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the character encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNaF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows circus babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNaF 2 location. Basically, Elizabeth dying first has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work. Hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the FNaF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring-locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he re-emerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next chapter comes to a close, thereby leaving us with 5 more games to cover and another 40 plus years of Fazbear history.
So much lore.
When you put it that way, something tells me that this might balloon into 4 parts. Ugh, we'll see. My Faz heads, congratulations, you've made it through a massive upload. And hey, if you are still looking for more to watch, then check out the other 5 brand new awesome theories over on our new sister location, Style Theory. This thing literally
it is blue
today,
too,
so
which
this
is even
your
funnier.
chance to be one of the first people to ever subscribe to this brand new theory channel. Get yourself the bragging rights of being there on day 1 and subscribing. I recommend checking out the video on Killer Heels. I think that one's the best starting spot, and then you just explore the channel from there. And again, if you like what you see, give it a subscribe. It has been a super fun journey so far, and we have ourselves some banger episodes coming up over the next couple weeks. Can you be allergic to color like we see on the show Wednesday? How many t-shirts does it take to stop a bullet? Basically things that you're going to want to be there for. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your subscription. Link is on screen right now. Go over there, check out the channel, give us your watch time, help tell YouTube that this is a
give us your watch time, please. I'm begging you.
Watch time.
I have no doubt if you keep an open mind.
If you made it to the end, comment
and
pineapple.
as always, my friends, remember, it's all just a theory. A game
theory.
Give me a week or 2 to recover from this launch, and then we'll finally finish this FNaF theory up.
Okay, so that was the second part of the FNaF Ultimate Timeline. What do you think?
Overall, again, I think it's fine. It's definitely because we have always assumed that the puppet murder was kind of like first, and even Elizabeth's death being first. It's definitely hard to wrap your brain around the crying child being the first death.
It's a lot.
And then at the end, he does say that it is implied that you play as the crying child in FNaF 4, which I firmly believe we are the crying child in FNaF 4.
Yeah, I do.
But that's going to be a little hard to wrap my brain around. But it does make sense if the crying child was the first death, and then obviously Charlie, and then Elizabeth by accident or whatever.
That does sort of make sense, yeah. Like William got like outraged that his kid got hurt by one of Henry's animatronics, and then he wanted revenge. So it does sort of make sense in a way, but that's just a theory. A game theory. See you next time.